Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Oh, little Nancy Pelosi, you may be gone, but not forgotten. Just because you've resigned your position as leader of Democrat House members, just because we're most likely going to be seeing less of you moving forward, doesn't mean that we're just going to forget that we've forgotten about you. Oh, not at all, quite the contrary. Your, quote, legacy is still fresh in my mind. A legacy of betrayal, dishonesty, division, chaos, unjust persecution remains very, very fresh in my mind. And just because you're no longer the face of the Democrat Party, or one of the faces, doesn't mean that you get to escape accountability. There's already a House Republican investigation which has uncovered many key facts tying Nancy Pelosi to the events of January 6th as potentially being a psyop involving the House Sergeant at Arms, a plot to block Capitol security, block the National Guard from being deployed on that day so Nancy Pelosi could get her event, all conveniently captured on camera behind the scenes by her daughter and a documentary film crew. Well, if you think that investigation is over, think again. Once again, thanks to Matt Gaetz and the pressure that him and the rest of those Freedom Caucus patriots applied, the House GOP is finally on the offensive. Nancy Pelosi is probably shaking in her boots because today we learned that the House GOP, once again thanks to Matt Gaetz, is now promising the release of 14,000 hours of January 6 tapes that were hidden by Democrats. Basically everything Nancy Pelosi and Liz Cheney didn't want you to see is now going to be released. Such a bipartisan House committee it was, truly looking for the truth by admitting 14,000 hours of tapes, actual evidence of the events that occurred on that day. We've got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, take a look at this from Trending Politics. New, Matt Gaetz announces Republicans will release 14,000 hours of January 6 tapes that were hidden by Democrats. During an interview with Charlie Kirk on his radio show on Tuesday, Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz announced that Republicans would be releasing 14,000 hours of January 6 tapes that have been hidden from the public. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
Can we get answers on J6? Can we get answers on this? Can we get answers on that? One of my favorite members of Congress is Thomas Massie, and the fact that he's going to be on this new committee really gives me hope. Matt, do you anticipate allowing the dogs to be released, if you will, against this fourth branch of government?
Yeah, Kevin McCarthy told us he's going to get the evidence out in front of the American people, and that means releasing the 14,000 hours of tapes that have been hidden, that I think would give more full context to that day rather than the cherry-picked moments that the January 6th committee tried to use to inflame and further divide our country. So yes, I do believe that part of this deal is a concession that we are going to get the truth out in front of the American people. And you know what? Kevin McCarthy could have in his victory speech just said, well, the government is weaponized, but he was very specific in his language. He talked about the weaponization of the FBI specifically. His willingness to do that with particularity, I think, shows that he's ready to lower his shoulder and to get into this fight that so many Americans expect us to be in on behalf of the civil rights that we hold dear.
Big news, as DC Drano says. Looks like the truth about Nancy Pelosi's fed up is going to be exposed even further. And Matt Gaetz announced this as a concession that was reached through negotiations. It's merely theoretical, hypothetical at the time. Well, no longer is that the case. It just goes to show how real everything we've been reporting on has been. A lot of people have been doubtful. Kevin McCarthy says he's going to make these concessions. He's agreed to them. Is he actually going to live up to his word? Like I said, folks, he pretty much has no choice. And what Matt Gaetz mentioned when Kevin McCarthy called out the FBI explicitly, how that was an important inflection point for the GOP establishment, it seems as though that might have been the foreshadowing, telling us that Kevin McCarthy is actually serious about the promises that he's made. And lo and behold, earlier this day, Kevin McCarthy made the announcement.
20 of them last Congress called on Speaker Pelosi at the time to release the adjacent Capitol Hill security footage of all things that happened on that day. Is that something that you'd be interested in doing? Congressman Gaetz said that you would be willing to do that. Is that?
Yeah, I think the public should see what has happened on day. I've watched what Nancy Pelosi did, where she politicized it, where for the first time in the history as a speaker, not allowing the minority to appoint to a committee, to pick and choose. We watched the politicization of this. I think the American public should actually see all what happened instead of a report that's written for a political basis. And I think the answer. We're looking through that. I want to be very thoughtful about it, but yes, I'm engaged to do that.
Speaker McCarthy now promises to release all of the security footage from the January 6th Capitol event. There you have it. Pretty much as I'm recording this video, that just released. Kevin McCarthy made that statement at 11 p.m. Eastern Time on the 12th of January, and it's now around noon of the same day. Things are lining up here perfectly. Kevin McCarthy would not make a public statement if he was not serious about it. He wouldn't say we're going to release all of the footage if he didn't intend on doing so. We know that because Kevin McCarthy is very careful with his words. He generally speaks quite vaguely, avoids using certain terms or saying certain things, and if he is saying it, then it means that it's done. It's a done deal, folks. It's sealed. The America First Patriot segment of the party is getting concrete results from GOP leadership. This is what I was saying, is that Kevin McCarthy is probably not your favorite guy for the job. Kevin McCarthy with constituent pressure or GOP representative pressure is a pretty decent outcome. It's not best case scenario, but it's not bad. And finally, we're going to get to the bottom of this thing. Nancy Pelosi and Liz Cheney purposely removed Republicans from the January 6th panel who wanted to truly make it bipartisan, who wanted to look at the whole truth and not just the Democrat preferred segment of the truth. And so what we saw was a January 6th sham, a kangaroo court, so to speak, where they were purposely selecting evidence and in some cases misrepresenting evidence and doctoring evidence. All the meanwhile, they told us it was a bipartisan commission. Absolutely not. Well, now it's truly going to be bipartisan because now we're going to see the other side. We're going to see the truth. We're going to get to the bottom of it. We've seen video footage evidence of Capitol police officers opening doors, ushering people in some cases, probably the most egregious offense that we've seen so far, Capitol police officers unlocking magnetically locked doors, allowing people into the Capitol. Well, how much more of that are we going to see? How much more just peaceful field trip style walking are we going to see from Trump supporters who were present on that day? If you tell me that there's 14,000 hours of video footage available to release, well, then it could only mean one thing. That is where the counter-Democrat narrative evidence is. Because clearly, if there was something damning within that big block of CCTV footage, Nancy Pelosi and her goons would have used it already. But as we know, they barely had anything. Because for the most part, what took place on that particular day was overwhelmingly peaceful. And so I think probably what we're going to see is hours of footage showing exactly that. And maybe we're going to see some police brutality. Maybe we're going to uncover or discover things which we didn't even know happened or existed. Because Nancy Pelosi and her goons clearly weren't tackling this, looking to be honest. Once again, the question remains, what exactly were they hiding? Why were they so fervently trying to hide the Ray Epps transcript? And of course, the rest of this video footage. We are going to get unprecedented access to all of it. And it's time that there's a counterbalance. Leave no stone unturned. It's time to stop allowing the Democrats to craft their narratives without any counter. And on this January 6th thing, it's time for the GOP to counter and counter hard. Release it all. Make it all public. Create transparency so that there is actual evidence and context surrounding the events. Inject some nuance, so these top Democrat goons and Democrat talking heads look like the absolute fools that they are when they say things like Kamala Harris comparing it to 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. Well, let's have the actual video context next to them saying that, and then let's really compare it to 9/11 and Pearl Harbor. Absolute lunatics. Of course, the Democrat narrative is falling apart, but that tends to happen when you approach everything from such a dishonest, despicable angle. That's what I got for you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel if you guys are up for it. I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.